Welcome back. How did the Dadbod negotiation go? What did you reveal? Did you keep anything secret? What tactics did you try? I like this one. This one is a little more like real life. You're still focused on a single issue, the sale price, but you have to pick your own reservation and aspiration points. You've got a set of references, but you don't have complete information on any of them. Now for the fun part. Let's take a look at the confidential information from each side. We'll start with the seller. We learned that the seller is not really under any time pressure, but they do want to sell the app. They don't want to deal with managing it. They don't want to turn it into a startup. They just want to get as much money as they can, put it in the bank, and move on with their lives. We learn that the seller has a competing offer. Another buyer has agreed to the same terms and offered $1.2 million. The seller thinks they can do better. The seller had to set a reservation point between 1.7 and 2.1 million. They were instructed to decide on an RP before walking in the door. Now we'll talk about the comps in a minute, but let's take a look at the buyer situation for a moment so we can get a value stick drawn. The buyer knows this app is the cheapest it's ever going to get. The buyer wants to make a deal before Dadbod starts getting more media attention and interest from the investor crowd. The buyer can get a comparable app for $3 million, so that's their BATNA. The buyer's boss has told them that they can spend $2 to $2.4 million on the app, but less is better. They're also instructed to settle on an RP before entering the room. Now, we didn't give you an aspiration point this time. That was for you to decide. But we did give you some information about other apps. You each had the same figures for the same apps, but the information was framed differently. You know Mom Hair and Aunt Car had sold for $1 million and $1.5 million. You knew Homework Hack had sold for $3 million, but you both had a sense that that sale came with fewer strings attached. And then there was the big one, Babyface, and its reported $10 million deal. You had asymmetrical information on the context of that deal. So let's take a look at the ZOPA. Depending on how aggressively each participant set their reservation point, you might have had as little as $100,000 in wiggle room. But if each person set a relatively relaxed reservation point, you might have had $700,000 to play around with. Now, how accurately do you think you scoped out the ZOPA in your negotiation? Next, let's talk about aspiration points and asymmetrical information. You both had information about a $10 million app, Babyface, but you had very different insights into that app. The seller knew it sold for $10 million. They had reason to believe it wasn't a perfect comparison for their own app, but they might have thought they could get close. The buyer was told that the $10 million was totally out of line with the value of Babyface. The buyer was told it was a vanity purchase by a CEO for her husband. How did this $10 million app shape your conversation? Did either of you use it strategically for framing purposes? Did you get stuck on this number? Now, there was another comp that was a little confusing, and that was the $3 million Homework Hack app. Both sides knew or suspected that part of the reason for the high sale price was that its new owners planned to generate revenue from the data they collected. It's an imperfect comparison, and this is a lot like real life. We know that there are different planned revenue streams for this app, but we have no clue about the scale of those revenue streams. We have no idea how much or how little they might have affected the sale price. We also know Homework Hack is a little different from Dadbod in terms of content and appeal. It's a productivity app. It's not going to have the viral appeal and momentum that Dadbod has. The fact that it's a pretty boring app might have suppressed the sale price a little bit. There's no right or wrong way to play this negotiation. Now, I hope you came to a deal, and I hope you tried some tactics, and I hope you paid attention and gathered information like a pro. I hope you asked probing questions of one another, because things are about to get a lot more complicated. Welcome to our module on multi-issue negotiations.